Good afternoon and welcome to the Rutherford County School Board Work Session, October 11th, 2022. Our first call to order would be the Pledge of Allegiance by Ms. Sheila Bratton.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to have a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. So we're just going to go through the agenda. If anybody has any questions, let us know. So we'll move to the approval of the consent agenda. If there's anything on there that needs to be moved.
No, just the one thing I would bring up, I know it's gotten a lot of national attention, so just know that under Oakland High School, that is the name of a softball team. That's the Fury softball team, not anything else. So just in case that got brought up, that's the name for the softball team.
All right.
And we'll do recognition tomorrow
Yep.
night.
Mr. McCann will be here tomorrow night to be recognized for Thurman Francis Arts Academy being our National Blue Ribbon School.
Excellent. And we'll have a visitor tomorrow night, so number 8.
Yep, number 8 is our textbook adoptions, tab 2, so textbook selection committee for adoption of textbooks. The names and qualifications of the following individuals are being submitted for the appointment to the 22-23 Math Instruction Materials Committee upon board approval. The appropriate forms, Education Department Form 2150, are attached. The document includes the educators, parents, and experts to serve on each respected committee. Just to give you, we've talked a little bit about, to give you a little bit more of an idea of this timeline. So we have a new standards adoption that is taking place in all of Tennessee that will go into place next school year. Math textbook adoption lines up, so that is an adoption cycle. So we talked about this a little bit at our TSBA fall meeting as well, but we are in our adoption cycle for math right now. And so that gets us into our roles and responsibilities. And our role as a school board is to, one, approve the members of the committee. The members of the committee then go through the State Board of Education, finalizes or votes on their final list October 28th. And so we will go from that list that the state gives us on October 28th. The only caveats, there are some special courses once you get into high school that we may have to go off of a different list based on recommendations because nobody submitted a bid. If they're a highly specialized statistics course or some upper level math that nobody submitted a bid for. From this point, we will have, once the board approves our committees, we will have an oath and a swearing in. So they have to take an oath that they don't have a conflict of interest, that all different types of things follow with fidelity. And then we go through and have the different vendors present to our teachers. Then we'll, within each committee for each grade and each area of mathematics, we'll go through and they'll actually teach some of these in the classroom, and then they submit their reports back to the committees about here's what we recommend, here's what we liked, here's what we didn't like. They will then, January, February are our heavy months, and so they will then be really looking at those in depth to make a recommendation. I believe our recommendation has to be approved by the board by April 15th. So in state law, we have to adopt a math textbook. We don't necessarily have to purchase a math textbook, but if we don't purchase, then we're having to use what we've used in the past. So there is that cost. It is a huge cost. We are looking at somewhere upwards of 11 to 13 million, just rough estimates for textbooks for a district our size. And so that is a huge cost. There is a requirement, so we fill out every single year. There is a compliance form that we submit to the Department of Education, and on that compliance form, we check off that every student has access to their own individualized book. I know some other counties don't do that because it is so cost prohibitive, but we still provide access for every kid for one book. So, Dr. Chastain, anything I left out about the adoption process? I'm sure there is.
No, that's pretty thorough. A couple things. We follow, obviously, the state's high-quality instructional materials rubric and the process. I'm also proud of the fact that for every grade band, we have central office and teacher representatives that went through the state review process, so they have been well-versed in how all of this works. You will notice that our central office staff, nobody is a voting member, so they are there to help facilitate the process, but it's teachers and parents that will vote.
And then for parents, so in policy, it asked for principals to submit parents, and so we had, how was that submission like? Was there high, or what did it look like?
One gets a little crazy, because as you can imagine, a lot of our meetings take place during the day, and we've tried to rearrange some of that, but trying to make teacher schedules and parent schedules work was problematic, but we have. So we've met the threshold of at least 10% of our members are parents, and the process was we reached out to all of our principals. They suggested 2 to 3 names, and until we kind of met that quota, there were a lot of phone calls. So people have been very receptive. It's just sometimes the schedules don't work out. I will say that if parents are interested in just the materials in general, they are always held at the repository at MTSU. So if they need some help on finding that, it's at the MTSU library, and they can direct them to where the materials that have made the cut at the state level, where those are housed.
The state also has all of those linked online as well for digital copies under the textbook adoption list. We have that linked on our website. We have all of the committees linked on our website for 30 days as required in our policy. So we're now into that portion to where we're ready for them to take their oath and get started.
Is there any savings on going electronic book?
There used to be a savings going to electronic, but now most of them are charging for the entire package. Or the textbook, for example, is going to be a textbook like our current math adoption. So it's a consumable like we used to call workbooks, and they are $11 to $13, and then you pay $150 for the digital access. So, yeah, we used to, but not. They've caught on to that portion of it. And just to give you a target date, and Dr. Chastain and I know this, but we are targeting the March 21st, 23rd board meeting as the one for final approval, and that is why having those dates out in front are so important, and having it as a schedule, because if we miss that March 21st and 23rd, then we still have a backup the way we're scheduled of an April 4th and an April 6th. If we missed that, then we would have to call a special call board meeting just to meet the state requirement to have it by April 15th. So, happy to talk about textbooks. Should just have to ask the teacher, and the teacher says no, then ask the principal, or we can get them one if that case. That does happen every once in a while. Sometimes, usually we'll get that comment from a parent, my kid said they can't get a textbook, and sometimes they don't necessarily want the textbook, so we'll be happy to give them a textbook. We have a material center, not with a whole lot of extra textbooks, but we have enough for growth for 2 to 3% every year. But we can absolutely do that.
Are we changing the progression of math in high school?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's going to be
Yes. And
algebra
we're going,
1, geometry, algebra 2, back to the, okay.
yep, and
No
we,
integrated math.
No more.
Yeah.
and in talking with our math specialist and our high school and middle school team, we discussed, do you go ahead and do a progression to where the 9th graders who have now integrated, do they continue through? We will have a crosswalk so that we're going to go ahead and just move right away.
Oh, good.
And then in regards to the parents, Dr. Chastain, do we have parents that have at least a child in the elementary, middle, and high school?
On the committees?
On the committee, yes.
And on the forms that have all the names, it has the school that they're kind of representing or where that child is currently enrolled.
Okay, great.
So you said freshmen who are taking it. What about above that? Are they staying?
No, they're all going through. So we'll switch everybody over and do a crosswalk, so that if integrated 3, for example, if you have a sophomore, this year's integrated 2 would go into integrated 3. We'll have a crosswalk so that we would have standards that wouldn't have been covered in integrated 3, but then we will go ahead and start into algebra 2. You can hit on that, Dr. Chastain.
I was just going to add that the curriculum leads and our specialists are already working on that to make sure that any gaps this year will be covered. So they're working hard to make sure that there isn't a student that gets caught in that swap and is missing something. So that's definitely top of mind.
I know there's been a lot of talk too about math and science teachers being the most difficult to fill those positions right now too. Do we expect that might change a little going back to the old?
Yes.
This will help us some because we know that we were losing teachers to other districts who stayed on the traditional model. It's still going to be a shortage just because of how much we're growing. But I do envision This was something that in theory the state pushed. I know one of our math specialists is very, in theory, the way that this should progress with math, but in practice, it isn't necessarily working for us. The largest majority of districts that went that way are now coming back into the traditional model, which is why we chose to as well. Data was impacted because of COVID. We didn't have the data necessarily to support it. You didn't have districts that were on board that were supporting it in a number that we felt like we had a consortium to really make decisions. And then textbooks weren't really supporting that integrated 1, integrated 2, integrated 3 approach because not a lot of districts in Tennessee were doing it, so the vendors didn't apply.
And I don't think our test scores were going up. In fact, they were going down.
And trig is going to be optional now, right? Because it was integrated with the other
You
one,
still
so
just
not,
have to take 4 years of math.
yeah, okay.
Well, just to clarify real quick.
okay.
Unless, in case there's like a trig phobia that I don't know about. But all the standards that are in the integrated model are still part of what gets tested. It's just they're sequenced in algebra specific, geometry specific, then algebra specific with some statistics mixed in. So those standards will still be there, but it won't be part, like a big chunk of an integrated course, if that makes sense. And we can send those sequences, scoping sequences when those get developed, and that way everybody's on the same page, and if there's a trouble area, we know what
Oh,
it is.
good. So what course will be optional?
There are a lot, and we have a course, I think, list on our website, but a lot of times that comes in that 4th-year math course, especially the way we've had that, but anywhere from statistics to calculus to pre-calculus to college algebra to an applied math. So there's a long list of kind of that 4th-year culminating math course. The traditional sequence will also allow a lot more students to double up, kind of. That we're really kind of working on where to accelerate. Do you accelerate in middle school or do you accelerate in high school or both? So this will give students more options to accelerate their math course taking while in high school.
Good. I think we're going to see different results. At least I hope. I know my child will be, well, I'm not going to say anything, but yeah, that's good.
I just want the board to understand what these committees go through. Having led them for 16 years, these committees work hours and hours and hours, and it's about like a charter school application, and hours going through these books, looking to see if they match the standards, looking to see if they meet the needs of this community, and it is really, really monumental. So, kudos to them by the time they get down to a final book that they recommend.
Is it open for the board just to sit and just go?
Oh, yeah,
We should
sure.
go. I mean,
You could watch them going through, a horizontal
right,
trace
yeah,
or a
yeah, they're
vertical
gonna go
trace
through
and
that.
be amazed at what they do with textbooks and how they trace them and look at them. We still do horizontal and vertical traces. Oh, there you go. Know what I'm talking about?
yeah, it'd be interesting.
It is very, very
Just to
interesting.
observe the process.
It really is.
So if you can let us know when they're meeting,
The schedule, yeah.
There's lots of,
that'd be great.
lots of.
That's right, Scary.
Oh, I'm sure.
You will
there
have
is.
plenty of opportunities to
I'm sure there would be.
And the other part, I want to thank our teachers to it because we have a lot of opportunities now that educators are getting paid. Tutoring kind of brought that a portion of it. Our textbook committee members are not paid. And so they are doing this all and that did hurt some of our applications because we are now in a time to where, especially in the elementary, that's where we struggled the most, was they have power hour tutoring, they have summer school, they have STEAM, they have all these different things that they're applying to do, and there's just not enough time for them to do the requirements to meet the power hour tutoring and the requirements of the textbook commission. So when they have to choose, they're choosing the one they're getting paid on. So these are true people who are passionate about.
But at least this does go towards licensure, right? It can go for the hours
Yeah.
that they have to get over
So they get
licensure.
credits.
That 90 hours that they have to get on top of everything else? Yes. Bet y'all didn't know about that.
Well, that's why you're,
That's why you
Helping
have
us
me, the 90
understand,
hours
that's
you have to
right.
get on top of everything else.
Any more questions? Next item, number 9.
All right,
Riverdale High School Coca-Cola contract, tab 3, Riverdale High School request approval of the attached contract with Coca-Cola. This is a renewal agreement with Coca-Cola in which they will pay Riverdale High School $5,000 per year up to 5 years and allow a percentage of sales to go to Riverdale High School. In exchange, Riverdale will exclusively offer Coke products.
And some big names.
And I'll add something Monica and I have worked on quite a bit was that principals can sign a contract up to a year. 1 to 4 years requires board approval, and then outside of that would require county commission approval, so we're trying to keep everything below that. Is that correct? Yep.
Do a lot of our high schools do this?
Yep. Oh, yep.
Basically all of them.
Yep.
It's good.
Any other questions? Item number 10.
All right, number 10, legal, tab 4. So we have 3 out-of-county transfer students. So the first one is discipline student number 1. And so I can make a recommendation based on these because these are applying to the board from out of county, unlike a disciplinary hearing authority. It's already one of our students. So the first recommendation is motion to approve or deny out-of-county transfer students. And you guys should have the updated one in your folders, I believe, that have what those recommendations are along with all of the information around that student. So my recommendation on the first student is to deny admission. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to talk with you afterwards, individuals, since it involves individual students. The second one, if we are looking at that one, so discipline student number 2, we have that regarding transfer student under discipline number 2. So the board has been requested to admit a transfer student under discipline from another school system. The student was remanded for making a threat. According to policy 6.318, the board may approve admissions when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion, and my recommendation is to deny. And you have the information from the other school system there. The other thing I will add on that one is you will see it looks like a huge file. This school district, for some reason, went ahead and put alternative school for every single day for the rest of the school year. So you'll see these dates haven't actually occurred, but that's what they went ahead and done because that was their jurisdiction on that one. And then the third one, the board has been requested to admit a transfer student under discipline from another school system. The student is remanded for possession of an e-cigarette. According to policy 6.318, the board may approve admissions when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension. Recommendation on this one is to be admitted and placed into the alternative school. And you'll see they also had some other incidences as well. This student does have some special services.
Any questions?
So now I'll go back to the other one. We don't have, oh, you got a question? Sorry. Okay. All right, so now we are going to go back to, since under the legal section. So the September 28th meeting, and I'm going to pull up the meeting notes just so that I can recall this one. So it was number 3 on the September 28th legal tab 4. The board has been requested to review a decision of the Disciplinary Hearing Authority, DHA, to overturn conduct prejudicial to good order or discipline of a student from Stewart's Creek High School pursuant to Board Policy 6.317. Based on a review of DHA's record, the board may, and the board in this instance chose 6-1 to B, overturn the decision of the DHA. However, if we go and look at our actual board policy, and this is a first, so no one did anything wrong intentionally, it is just a first, and talking to TSBA, this was the first one that they knew of. Tammy was Sharp was on the phone with me, said, I've never heard of that before, so lucky us, we keep having firsts. So under this, it says, the DHA may take the following disciplinary actions, and this is our policy 6.317. So again, the DHA may take the following disciplinary actions: affirm the decision of the school principal, order the removal of suspension unconditionally, and then it gets into the board actions. And so if the board chooses to review the record, it shall A, affirm the decision of the hearing authority, B, modify the decision to a lesser penalty. In this case, because the school was the one that actually made the appeal, when the board 6-1 voted to overturn the DHA's hearing, it actually put back in place a more strict punishment, which would go against our board policy. And so it does later on say that if the board chooses to grant a hearing, then you can do whatever punishment you can, A, affirm the decision, B, modify the decision in any manner, or C, impose a more severe penalty. So to get in compliance with the policy, my recommendation is we grant that student from September 28th from Stewart's Creek High School a hearing before the board to get in compliance with the policy. I know that was a long-winded way around that, but I felt like it was good to cover all that. Ms. Ridley, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Are we voting on that tonight or tomorrow?
We'll vote on that tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep. That'll be my recommendation to add that, a recommendation to add a hearing to get in compliance with our policy.
And then we add the hearing as soon after is a hearing.
So in working with the hearings, Ms. Ridley, do you want to talk a little bit about hearings? Because we've been working on 2 of them.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Sorry, my mic was not on. If we vote, when we do the vote, whatever happens, how soon after is a hearing?
So the board voted last meeting to have a hearing in the Siegel middle case. So I'm working with that family to get that scheduled. So I have their availability for the next 2 weeks. And I'll actually email the board tomorrow after I confirm that date with the principal. So I'm shooting for roughly a 2-week period, because obviously we want to make it fair to the student and not delay it. So I'm shooting for a 2-week period after.
So it'll be 2 weeks for the Siegel and then 2 weeks for the Stewart's Creek? It'll be at the same time?
Hopefully we can do it on the same night. So ideally the board members don't have to come on multiple nights.
Yeah, that'd be great if we can have it.
That would be a lot of meetings,
Yeah.
Yes,
a lot of long nights.
yes.
So is it true that he is still allowed to be in school now, or no?
Which student are we referring to?
Stewart's Creek.
I don't know the status of that student. I'm not sure if he's back at Stewart's Creek or if he's.
He wouldn't be. He would still be at the alternative school till the hearing.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
I guess that's a question I have because, and I'm not looking at a calendar, so forgive me, but so we've already been about 2 weeks since our last meeting?
So our last meeting was September 29th. Does that sound right? Okay. Yeah, so this Thursday would actually be 2 weeks.
Okay, so we're talking about a potential full month before the hearing actually occurs?
It could be, yes.
And so regardless, then the child is in whatever state was deemed at that time until that hearing takes place?
Yes.
So I guess my question would be, how do we speed that process up? Because if it's a situation, I'm thinking of it through the eyes of a parent. If it's a situation where a parent is coming to us and saying, I'm appealing this decision, their kid is potentially in an alternative school, which may potentially get overturned, but in the meantime, they're sitting in that alternative school for 4 weeks, potentially.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, I'm just going off of what she was saying. She's trying to get them scheduled within 2 weeks. We're already out 2 weeks, I guess.
Would this have happened quicker?
But, yeah, there was fall break, so they haven't been in the school.
Yes, because
There was the 7 days that they were off.
I guess my question more would be, what does the process look like? So the board votes, we're going to have a hearing. What does that process look like, I guess, and how long does that process take? I understand that some of it's not in your control because the parents have to get back to you and schedules and all of that, but I guess my question is, from the time it's decided, can you walk me through, I guess?
yeah, so what I did in this case was I sent a letter to the parents saying this is what the board has voted, which I've done in all these DHA hearings, so that the parents have written notice of what the actions were. I asked them to contact me so that we could set up a hearing. So they did last week on fall break, but of course I was out. So I spoke with them yesterday. So they gave me some availability that they have in the next 2 weeks. Of course, trying to schedule, 7 board members, the principal, the parent, is a little bit of a challenge to get 10 people here on the same date. So I got several dates from them that hopefully will work for everyone. So I think we have it narrowed down to 1 or 2 dates that
I know,
people are available for.
is it the DHA that has a requirement that we meet within a certain period of time, but there's not one once it goes through the appeal process and then we meet again?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's correct. DHA has to be within 5 days, and then after maybe 10.
10 days.
10 days, yep,
10
sorry.
days of when the student is suspended.
10 days of the suspension, and then once somebody appeals, then we have 5 days from that written receipt to notify them that it had been a decision for appeal. And so we technically would not send them the letter saying that you were being granted a hearing until after the board meeting tomorrow. And so from that point, the parent could wait their 5 days, which I don't think they will in this case, but they could wait their 5 days to request it as well.
Madam Chair, I have a question. This was a unique situation. We've never had this happen since I've been on the board. In a situation like this where DHA has been overturned and the principal, is there opportunity for those two to get back together and try to iron this out before it comes back before the board?
Not in policy, there's not.
I think there should be something to allow those two to get together and see if there's something they can work out. Because really the board, we're the furthest ones away from this incident. And we're up here trying to make a decision on something that DHA and the principal is at odds on. So I really think we ought to give those two an opportunity to get back together and see if there's not some kind of compromise before we have to make a decision.
And Ms. Ridley and I have talked, and going forward with discipline hearings, we are going to make sure that with each one of them, we say, here's, this case situation with this case at the student at this school, here are the options based on. And again, we take responsibility for part of that as well, because this was a new situation with the school appealing for everyone.
And there's quite a difference between what he was originally given the 10 days, but when we overturned it, it actually made it 55 days. So I think we do need to have a hearing. And I mean, I know we're willing to meet whenever, if we can't get the two together on the same day, because honestly, we all want the children back in the school.
I could look at other dates for the Stewart's Creek one if it doesn't, but again, it will depend on the parents' availability, on the principal's availability, and you all's availability. But I can look at other dates.
So at this hearing, are we going to hear from 3 different parties, the parents, the school, the principals, and the DHS?
The DHA doesn't present, so you would hear from the parents, and the parents can present anything that they want to you all. So they can read a statement, they can have their child talk to you all, they can bring witnesses, and then the school board would present, our case, for lack of better terms, where, the principal or if a teacher was involved, whoever was involved would come and talk to you all about the incident.
Okay, so you will hear from both sides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Does the school board make the final decision in this instance? Like, we'll decide what punishment is necessary at that point, or whether
You decide, the school board decides.
we're basically acting as the judge in the case?
Yes. Yep. And that is outlined that's why when Mr. Young brought that up, all of this is verbatim with our policy in 49.6.3401. And so it goes through finishing with the board having the option to uphold, overturn, or do any discipline as you see fit, which is a strange position for elected officials to be in.
Right. I mean, I think it's interesting, just the points have been made on the board tonight already about and I'm trying to carefully word my sentences here, if the intention was to not have a longer punishment than the 10 days, but yet by overruling that, we made the punishment worse unintentionally, and then now we're going to be extending that time that the student's going to be in alternative school, maybe unjustly, because we can't get to the case fast enough. And I understand the circumstances, so it's nobody's fault in that regard. Then in that type, I mean, I still think it's good to have this in policy, but I also think Coy makes a fair point that if there is an opportunity for them to, it would solve so much faster if they could sit at the table and get this worked out. And if they come to a conclusion amongst themselves that is they find just on both sides and walk out of that room, that not only saves the hearing, but that also keeps this particular student from having to continue to serve maybe what could be an unjust punishment.
Well, I think it's just looking at the process because we have the DHS and that's supposed to be coming to the table and both sides coming to an agreement, correct? Is that what the,
So the DHA is both sides presenting their case, and then those three individuals deciding, did they follow, give due process? Did they meet the punishment or consequence within what is allowed in their code of conduct? And so they're not necessarily taking it from a, did this occur, did this not occur outside? They're looking at strictly from a, with the evidence we have, and I guess they are in some degree looking at, did this occur, but they're looking at more from a, was due process given, was the event, then the consequence fit with our code of conduct.
yeah, I think there needs to be some,
Can we look at policy when we overturn that and put in policy that it just stipulates that we return it back to them, but it cannot be, I know that is our policy, but it cannot be more than whatever.
You'd be going against state law at that point, because that our policy is strictly, that's why I'm reading just to make, there may be a small one, but in looking at it, I don't have our policy pulled up. I'm on,
So we need to find a way to address it faster, address it sooner.
and I think we're also under the, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Tidwell, but it was a somewhat of a split vote as well, and I'm not sure that everybody.
Right.
Still,
No,
that's
no,
why I
yeah,
think
I'm
a
just
hearing.
in theory.
I know you're being careful. Yeah.
Is this a hearing that is held in public, or is this a hearing that is held in private?
It is in private unless it is requested by the parent to be open.
Correct. The parents have 5 days to request if they want an open hearing. If they don't request an open hearing, it is a closed hearing. We would have it here, but
it's
no.
closed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I would, not that we anticipate this, but I would almost say, if we're dealing with state law issues and stuff, if this becomes something that we're seeing more frequently in terms of hearings, it might benefit everybody to kind of have a standing monthly date for those situations so that parents know, like, this is the date. And I don't know if that's, can you just set forth a date, or do you have to allow them to pick the date?
You have to allow them.
I think to make it fair to the parents and the students, I think their availability obviously is crucial. So, for example, in the Siegel Middle child that you all voted to have the hearing on, his father works nights, and so, you know, that's why there were only a few dates that were available in the next coming weeks, because he's not available. So I think it would be really hard if I said the first Monday of each month is when we're going to have these hearings, because the parents may not be available on the first Monday, and then if they're not here to present, then you all don't get their side, you know, and don't get the full picture. So
yeah, I don't think that's
it's a tough,
to have a
Just
standing
trying to figure out
meeting.
ways to speed it up, because we don't want them
I
necessarily.
understand, yeah, I understand, but I think we set up ourselves for some other issues that, because if they don't get their say-so because of time constraints, whatever, I think that could backfire on us. So I would rather leave it on the courts of the parents to give us their availability so that they can make arrangements and be here.
and of course, don't forget that the parents can also bring an attorney with them. So then if you have an attorney, I can tell you from attorneys in private practice, their availability is, you know, also very limited. And so we don't have that right now, but that's something that I foresee in the future, is that, you know, attorneys will be involved, and so we'll have to work around those schedules as well.
So what do you think would be a reasonable amount of time to wait to see if we can get them together? If not, then we'll go to Plan B and have them separately.
I should know tomorrow after the board meeting on what y'all decide to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, I knew that would be fun. Thank you guys for entertaining the conversation.
Yeah.
We just keep doing fun things, don't we? All right. So we now at our, I've emailed it, and I know you have a smaller copy of it as well, and it should be pulling up, I hope. If not, I'm going to have to come over there.
So these are our capacities.
Yes, so we're looking at strategic planning, having a short agenda today. We were going to take the opportunity to look at our enrollment numbers, maybe look at just a couple of our zoning boundaries so that I can give you an overview. We're going to take a little bit of it today, a little bit of it tomorrow, and looking at some of these numbers. I've emailed them to you as well because that is an extremely small, just looking at it document. And so that way we can go across the county, and once it gets connected, I'm going to take it from a standpoint of some of our not overcrowded schools so that we can get our bearings of what we're looking at countywide and then kind of go in county as well. John, you just want me to come over there? I can come over there and do it. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for putting this together for us.
I have been asked to add a couple of things to it, so I'll do my best to have it updated for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's start with elementary school, and so I've got all of them, and you're gonna see as I work on this, I'm just gonna block them out just to give myself a note that we've looked at that one. So let's start at Wilson Elementary School. And so you will see Wilson Elementary School, and I'm gonna go back and forth. Wilson Elementary School is going to be up here, and I'm gonna pull up our elementary zones. And you will see that the Wilson Elementary Zone is this on the north end, serves kindergarten through 5th grade. And in looking at our enrollment, Wilson Elementary, we had a rezone 3 years ago, I believe, which has relieved overcrowding at Wilson Elementary. We do have a little bit of room over there. You'll see that we have 935 capacity. We currently have 654 students. And so there are 267, in theory, available seats there. We would have to add teachers, more desks, those type, because we've moved them with rezoning, but that is your building capacity there. Connecting to that, I'm going to move over to Walter Hill. Walter Hill borders Wilson, and so that current zone, again, north bordering Wilson County. And so Walter Hill is actually growing fairly quickly. It was sitting in the low, mid 300s about 3 years ago before our rezone. We're now at 595. You will see their enrollment is at 543 for their capacity, so they're a little bit over. They had some extra spaces because that used to be a K-8 building that we've been able to outfit. So that school is one that I see in the future. We're probably going to have to look back to some of them to Wilson because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to look at adding portables to a school when we have a school with 267 seats sitting right beside it. The other option of that is continuing clockwise. We have Lascassas Elementary. We have this little green zone that is a dual zoned Lascassas Walter Hill. It has been that way for a really long time from my understanding. And so those parents, I know exactly how many kids live there, but it's not a large section either. But they dual zoned Walter Hill or Lascassas. Lascassas Elementary is growing. And so if I'm going back up to Lascassas, each one of those columns tells you the number of teachers or number of classrooms in the spots, number total. And then they have 697, and whoa, I lost it. 623 would be their capacity. Sorry, I went backwards. So their capacity 697, their enrollment 623. So we've got 74 seats roughly that they can use. Any questions, suggestions on how we're doing this? Because we're just going to take about 25 today and 25 tomorrow. If you have any suggestions, something you want me to look at, do it differently, just tell me because it's our first time doing this too. All right, so now we will move over into the Lascassas-Kittrell dual zone because it's about equal distance to both of those schools. And we will move over into Kittrell Elementary. Kittrell Elementary used to be a K-8 school as well. Kittrell Elementary's enrollment is sitting at 323 with a capacity of 493. And so You see 170 seats that we have. So when we've talked about in the past, do we have open seats? Yes, we have open seats, but it involves kind of that clockwise rezoning, and some of these schools, because of their location, would be a long bus ride for students to rezone them back over there. So that covers Kittrell. Now we'll we'll come back to Whitworth Buchanan because I'm going to do the elementary schools first. Let's go over to Plainview, our newest school. Actually, we'll go to Buchanan Elementary first. So we'll go Buchanan Elementary School. Buchanan borders Kittrell on the southeast side, and looking at Buchanan Elementary School, you will see that their capacity is 459. Their enrollment is 484. And so that is one that we just rezoned because of Plainview opening. And I'm going to show you Plainview because those were the schools that were impacted. Plainview has a capacity of 952, and we only have 507 students there. So thinking outside of the box, and I know it's not something common, I don't want to just bring it up there, but there's room there between Plainview, Buchanan. It would be crowded, but then you have extra space for a facility. And you can see those, yes, it's a little bit of a distance, but we have two schools there that together would have a capacity of about 1,400, and we have roughly 1,000 kids sitting there. So there's space there. I think, Mr. Tidwell, that's your zone,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah, Dr. Gagne?
So that gets us to Christian Elementary. Christian Elementary, with their capacity, is sitting at 731, and they're at 635, saying that they have open seats for 96. I just happen to know my kids go there. And this is one that we talk about quite a bit just with schools that we say their capacity is certain, but they have portables. And so some of these older schools have had additions like you talked about, Mr. Rosales, and while they're in theory may have 731 seats, the reality is we have 640 kids out there and we're still utilizing a portable because we've had to break rooms up in their cafeteria and library, those things. And you will see their, next one. So those kind of zones all hit each other. I'm going to come back to Barfield after we look at Rockvale. So looking at Rockvale Elementary, Rockvale Elementary includes the new annex, 1258, even though it's not quite finished yet. What is our update on that, Mr. Lee? Any idea?
Christmas.
So 1258, their enrollment has dropped. So their enrollment's 878. Their enrollment dropped because of the rezone to Barfield Elementary a couple years ago to give us some relief before this annex could be finished. The city school, this also has some dual zone, and the city school rezoned some of their students that used to be Cason Lane and Scales that went to Rockvale. Now that area goes to Overall Creek, and some students have stayed at Overall Creek Salem instead of Rockvale. And so we're about to get into some weird ones that we can't project exactly because parents can choose which school they're going to send their kid to. But that tells you we do anticipate having about 380 seats, which would give us room in that Blackman area to move some kids, but we would ultimately be moving them back again pretty soon right after that. And that area has been rezoned over and over and over again. So, any questions on that Rockvale South kind of half circle that we just did before we move into the city? All right, so now let's look at Barfield. And so now we are moving into Barfield, which does have a dual zone with the city schools. You have Salem that sits right over here, and you've got some other schools that you start to get a little bit closer to. So we have Barfield's enrollment. Barfield is over capacity. We knew it would be close because that area is one that we call that is more built out because there's not a whole lot of new construction with their school zone. So their capacity is 867. Their enrollment is 940. That was one last year that actually shrank quite a bit. It actually shrank for 2 years. When Salem opened, it took some of the enrollment from Barfield. When the new luster wears off and Barfield's an established school that performs well, students have returned back to Barfield and with our rezone. So Barfield is one that is over capacity. Portable wise, we have single portables and double portables. They have, is that correct? Do we have any portables over there, Trey?
I don't think so.
Do we?
No, we don't.
We have one portable that we use for
Atlas.
Atlas. That's correct. That's correct.
I got a question. When you're
Yep.
including capacity, are you including portables?
No, that is strictly just school building.
Okay.
Strictly just school building. Trey, I've gone about a fourth of the way through. What do you want to add to all this?
You're doing pretty good so far.
Okay. Nice.
The schools that are close and the ones that are over, and I hate to say we beat the horse all the time, but we've gotten really creative. They've used every space they can use. We've emptied out storage buildings. We've emptied out teacher workrooms. We've emptied out all kinds of things to keep them inside the building as much as possible. Some schools we've divided, Wilson Elementary, we took a couple of their large playrooms because their demographic changed, the pre-K stuff. So we took a large playroom and divided it into 4 classrooms. So there's a lot of schools that we've actually added more classrooms inside than what was originally designed. We've changed the interior concept to get more space to keep, because the principals don't want portables either. When they start asking for them, we've pretty much exhausted all that we can come up with.
All right, the other one, and so you'll see we pretty much covered this whole area down here. Eagleville, I'll show you Eagleville. Eagleville's a little bit different because they have your traditional, they're a 1 K-12 school. You'll see their overall capacity is 1,084 and they have 969. So that is why we take zone exemptions. I will say that we had a plan for zone exemptions that we had submit open seats for, and with the new construction in Eagleville this past year, we actually ended up having to add a teacher to their elementary school because they had more students that actually lived in the zone than they anticipated because of new construction. So don't anticipate filling up right away, but it is one that grew quicker than we expected last year. All right, so now let's get to Blackman, and of course you've got this area right here. Is Murfreesboro City Schools, to where we do not have any students through kindergarten through 5th grade. In 6th grade, these students can choose, and this is why it's somewhat of a moving target. I taught at Blackman Middle, so my 6th grade enrollment in the second week of August looked different than mine in September. And so these students are not current. They're one of the roughly 10,000 elementary school students that Murfreesboro City has. And so there's not a zoned elementary. We do have on a case-by-case basis if they pay, because they pay county taxes. If a student wants to go to a county school and provide their own transportation, they can. And that usually it's on this area and they go to Las Casas is usually what's happened. All right, so Blackman Elementary. Blackman Elementary is capacity 935 and they're sitting at 1,066. They have 7 single portables and 3 doubles. So 13 total portable classrooms. And again, in looking at it, the only area that you really have a lot of room to do is to do Rockville just for a little while because of their open seats. Then we move into Browns Chapel. So Browns Chapel has the Shelton Farm subdivision that is growing very quickly. And so they've grown over 80 kids from last year to this year. Browns Chapel is not currently at capacity. I worry if we did anything with zoning that we would zone them over capacity very quickly for any type of relief we would give Stewart's Creek or Blackman. So Browns Chapel, you'll see their capacity is 918 and they're sitting at 821. 97 students roughly is not going to help really either one of those schools as fast as if Browns Chapel grows 80 kids again this year in the Shelton Farm subdivision, just for example, they're at capacity now. And I don't believe we have any land there, correct? Any land at Browns Chapel?
No, that's a postage stamp. We bought just enough to get the school built. I mean, we don't.
What about
Outside.
portables?
Sir?
Is there any room for portables?
If you let me take their playground again.
So no room for portables is what you're saying?
No, sir.
Okay, good to know. All right, that'll move us into, let's go ahead and do Stewart's Creek, and then we'll move into Rock Springs, Stewartsboro, and we'll stop at elementary schools and do middle and high tomorrow, if that's okay with everybody.
That works.
All right, so now let's look at Stewart's Creek Elementary. Stewart's Creek Elementary School is way down here. Capacity 952 and enrollment of 1259. So 307 over, and you will see that they have 1 single and 3 doubles. And so you will see that building at Stewart's Creek and that building at Blackman are different but have a similar capacity to each other. And again, your only real options of rezoning some kids are to Browns Chapel, Blackman, so it's that whole, that whole clockwise, counterclockwise rotation. And then because it's right there, let's look at Rock Springs Elementary School, because we did add an annex there 3 years ago. Rock Springs Elementary School has their annex. Their capacity is 1258. Their enrollment is 878. Does that seem right? We'll look at that one to make sure that one's right.
Rock Springs Elementary's 1411 is their capacity, and their current enrollment's 1188.
Okay. So that one's, what was that again?
Rock Springs Elementary.
Am I looking at the wrong one? Oh, yeah, there it is. I was looking at Rockville. Thank you. Yeah, 1411 and enrollment's 1188. Thank you.
But they've grown quick. I mean, when we did that, they were in the upper 800s, and now they're already up to, you know,
And that's where that new
Yes.
Arbor Ridge is coming in.
Yeah.
and the Gwynn Farms.
Yep, that one's going to be done before Arbor Ridge for sure.
So that would be a struggle to rezone anybody there because it's going to be full. All right, so now let's go back to Stewartsboro. So we'll move over to Rocky Fork Elementary because these kind of three all border each other. Rocky Fork Elementary, this is its fourth year, is that correct? Fourth year in operation? So Rocky Fork Elementary School, and we've got Rocky Fork Elementary, the capacity of 1,071, they're sitting at 942. So again, that is a 4-year-old school getting very close to their capacity. Next hits Stewartsboro, so we're just going right down and covering all of these areas that are together. Looking at Stewartsboro Elementary School. Stewartsboro capacity is 952. That used to be a K-8 building. They're at 668, so you have a little bit of room there. We've moved one of our pre-K classrooms over there because we had some room. It is our outside of Rocky Fork Elementary, it's our next closest Title I school, but you still have so many Title I schools here who are over that capacity. You've got a little bit of room to look at something with Stewartsboro. I know part of the reason Stewartsboro is this way is they were keeping Stewartsboro lined up with the Rocky Fork Elementary and Smyrna High School cluster and not moving as much over into the Stewarts Creek area, trying to watch that middle high school. There's some overlap, but there's not as much as there could be to fill up Stewartsboro.
But there is a subdivision that has been primed already, literally down the street from Stewartsboro on Old Nashville Highway.
Okay.
So,
So that'll be,
so
they'll
it's,
take care of that.
yeah, so that they're still, you know, it's because that's the area, I live on that area, Blackman side, so.
Okay.
We're lucky that we have the senior homes in there that
Yes.
they don't add to our area right there.
All right, so this is the little bit of the strange zone because of all the way that the community schools for Smyrna were built several decades ago. So we have Smyrna Primary School that goes pretty far over there. There's not as many students here, but Smyrna Primary School, David Urey, we've got Smyrna West and Thurman Francis, all of those being very close together, but in Smyrna Middle School as well, sitting right there. But Smyrna Primary School, and looking at those numbers, Smyrna Primary School sits at capacity of 646, and they're at 577. And so you're within that 90% capacity range as well. They're one of our Title I schools. If you were to pull any more students into that, again, you would be moving further away from Smyrna Primary to pull kids into there. That borders Smyrna Elementary School. Smyrna Elementary School, capacity of 799, and they're at 701. But again, that's one of our schools that has a high ESL population, and when you have a high ESL population, you have to have your general classrooms for your core content area teachers, and then you have to have your ESL classrooms for your ESL services. So even though it may look like they have capacity, they don't because of the classrooms that we have to have for students receiving English as a second language. And then finishing up the north end, we have John Coleman. John Coleman's an area we do have seats. John Coleman has a new building and the annex, and I believe, is this just the main building?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So looking at John Coleman Elementary, you will see that their capacity is 986. Their enrollment is 510. So the history of that was an older building that was no longer necessarily in the shape that students need to be in, so they The county commission funded and the school board approved to go ahead and build a new facility. And looking at the zoning map, there's not a whole lot of places to pull from John Coleman. Wilson was already not necessarily overcrowded. Smyrna Elementary may be a little bit, but you're pulling directly away from an area around the school in a high poverty area. And with the lake right there, you don't have as much that Laverne Lake can pull from because of the roads. But that is a school that we have open seats at. When people talk about open seats, that's one. But it's without busing students all the way over there, it's going to be hard to get them there. We will now move to David Urey Elementary, which is right here. And David Urey Elementary, I think we've got 4 or 5 more, and then we'll be good. So thank you guys for staying patient with me. They have an annex, or an addition, I guess is the right way to call it. Did you call it an annex or addition? Addition?
We did an addition there.
So in addition, 731 students, and their enrollment 737. And so again, you will see they have portables. They are a high ESL population as well. And so they have to have those extra classrooms, and you're going to notice that trend continue on the north end, that we may have the capacity, but we have portables because of the extra services students need. And so that David Urey, Smyrna Primary, they're all right there together. You could rezone just a little bit to them, but they're 50 to 100 students all there together. That borders Cedar Grove. So Cedar Grove is right here. And then the last section we'll have is Laverne Lake and Roy Waldron, because I wanted to bring some attention to that uniqueness. We are going to Cedar Grove and Rock Springs Elementary. So we did Rock Springs, now we're looking at Cedar Grove. And looking at Cedar Grove, our capacity is 935. The enrollment is 786. And so we have just a little bit of room if the Rock Springs Elementary continued to grow so quickly that, of course, you've got your traffic issue of getting students over across I-24 on Sam Ridley. That may be a challenge with Cedar Grove, but there are some seats there based on what grows out.
Dr.
Yeah.
Cedar Grove is something that's kind of an anomaly. Those of us that live on that end, it's high apartments around, it's very dense. So one year it can drop, and if we were to take a chance on rezoning, the next year it can rebound at a very high rate quicker than others because of the large number of apartments that are in that area. So I've watched it over the last 5 or 6 years, and it'll be down 50, it'll be up 80. So it's very difficult to hit that one, and it's also high demographic. That's why you still see the portables there, you see the extra rooms, but there again, you see portables, and it's because of all the additional services that are required.
And also, they're putting in some condos over there. They're going to cut Genie all the way through to right there next to Cedar Grove. And there was a house that I saw today when we were at Laverne High School that they had bulldozed, and it's a pretty sizable lot. So I expect them to put either apartments or condos there.
Do we know, since we're talking about this general area of the county, do we know, does anybody know what's going in next to all that new construction where the chicken salad chick and all that? I think is that going to be apartments?
I can answer some of that. That is all, what you've seen developed thus far is all commercial. Everything from the Woods line next to the YMCA over to Montlow is residential apartments. And that developers out of Florida, they have reached out to us a couple of times to discuss what they're doing as part of their study. But that pretty much the wooded area all around behind the YMCA going over to Montlow's.
Have they offered to give us any of that land for free?
No.
A discount.
But that will be apartments. But the part that is developed right there now is all commercial.
Well, that's what I was concerned with, though, because then that just means this area that's coming eventually.
Yes.
So it's not quite as far along as some of the other stuff. That's what I was.
But it's pretty far down the planning stage. When they reach out to my department, they're getting close.
And we're very close to the John Coleman zone there, so I would hate to pull that because it is far away, but we've got those 400 seats, and right here, there's John Coleman zone. So there's some options there.
It would be good to point the schools that you said were ESL, because ESL is different, is unique.
Yes.
Requires more resources.
Yes.
Yes.
And so that'd be good to point that out. What is, when you say percentage, what is the percentage of ESL in those two schools?
40 to 50%. I'll give you the exact specifics. So for ESL, we've got our direct serve students, and so those are students that are receiving direct instruction every single day in an ESL setting outside of their normal Tier 1 math, science, English, social studies. Once students pass the assessment, the WIDA assessment access, then they go through T1 through T4, and we're in consultation. So they may not be direct certain, we may not need a whole portable, but a lot of your schools, especially with the elementary schools, do such an amazing job of helping students get language acquisition to test them out, but they still need a huge space. So although their direct serve may only be 30% of their population, their overall population may still be 50% because they're in those 4 years after testing out.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'll give you that for sure.
And one of the things that I found out today, visiting with Dr. Sutherland, when they break down the white, as far as the demographics, the white population includes Middle Easterns, Egyptians, and Koreans. And they're ESL, but they're in the white category. So we actually have more ESL in our schools than what we're officially
So
counting.
it doesn't count them in the ESL percentage?
It would count them in the ESL percentage, but it wouldn't count in one of the other demographic breakdowns of Latino,
Sure, yeah, and
non-English
that's
white.
fine. I
Yeah.
will just be concerned about the total population of ESL.
I'll have that for our retreat too. I can
Yeah.
give you a breakdown of by ethnicity, male, female, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Can do that.
that'd be great.
So are you,
We were gonna hit real quick, just Roy Waldron, Laverne Lake. Is that good?
yes, absolutely.
All right. Roy Waldron, so Roy Waldron actually has two campuses. We toured that. So they have the annex and they have the main building. That used to be Laverne Primary, and then Roy Waldron. Laverne Primary was K1, Roy Waldron was 2-5. They were our only campus and one of the only campuses in the entire state of Tennessee that did not have any type of accountability because they did not have a tested grade. And so now with TISA having extra federal funding, or not federal, state funding attached to outcomes, it made sense to make them a true K-5 campus. So they still operate almost as two separate buildings. We're working on that as we're into year 3 of that. But that Roy Waldron zone you will see is huge. And it is our biggest elementary, probably one of the biggest elementaries in the state, if not the biggest. So you will see Roy Waldron School. So that 1496 is the overall combined capacity, and they are sitting at 1271. And so there's a little bit of room for growth, but that is our highest poverty school. Roy Waldron and David Urey kind of fluctuate between our higher poverty, but you're looking at mid 70% poverty at that point. And probably higher than that because you have some parents who aren't going to turn that in. Just that's a pride portion in that type of community. So, and then the last one we have is Laverne Lake. So Laverne Lake is right on the campus of Laverne Middle School. You'll see they border our lake, so we are kind of, and then Davidson County right here, so we are bound somewhat by land and also by county. And so Laverne Lake Elementary School, their capacity is 935, and they're sitting at 855. They're one, like Mr. Lee talked about, that fluctuates quite a bit based on when we take the enrollment count, what time of the month it could be, those different types of things, where mobility is happening in the district. And in Davidson County as well, what their push is like.
On the north end, right?
Yep. The only ones I did not look at because they are more of our choice schools, and so just looking at them real quick, you'll see McFadden School of Excellence. They are over, but that's by choice because they have a certain number of seats, so their capacity is 374. They sit at 390. Not a lot of high-need students there, so they're able to fit with that. Thurman Francis as well. So Thurman Francis, we'll talk about them a little bit tomorrow, but they have a capacity of 773. They're completely built out as an all-magnet school now, and they sit at 658. And so they have the annex in the main building as well.
I think I asked this when we did our tour over at Thurman Francis, but how much land is behind there that we own?
There's about 6 or 7 acres behind us that we own. I sent that, right? All the additional land? Okay. I've got a portfolio of all
My
the,
mind is not working right.
but there's a few acres there. You want me to resend that out, the available?
Yes.
Okay, I'll resend that out.
That's one, and talking about our building, McFadden's one we worry about. Yes, it's a choice school, but that building is, how many years old is McFadden, Trey?
Wow.
Boy,
100, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I think that's correct. I went there.
We're doing a lot of work to McFadden, but it keeps, you can talk about it, it's a worry. You're fine, go
Prefer
for it.
not to.
Doesn't want to jinx it.
There's a lot of work that goes into McFadden based on its age. We had a lot of issues with water infiltration prior to the last 4 years. We've poured quite a bit of money into that to get that water infiltration stopped. Once you have water infiltration, then you have other issues that come along with it after the fact. You have, especially in old buildings, they have plaster walls. That moisture gets inside that big thick brick, and even once you get it stopped, then that moisture now wicks to the inside, and what it does, it makes the plaster turn loose. So you spend a period of time removing plaster, then you've got to determine, do we go back with plaster, do we go back with drywall? There's a lot of moving parts with those old buildings, and they're very difficult to maintain.
And that gets us to our last one, Campus School. So Campus School, their capacity is 323. We have 241 students there. That is not our building technically, is that correct, Troy?
What's that?
Campus School, that is.
No, sir, it's
Still owned by
MTSU's.
MTSU?
Yep.
Okay.
And so that is-
NTSU owns it. One of the first projects we did probably 12, 15 years ago, we poured quite a bit of money remodeling that building. MTSU, we have a unique agreement with them. We take care of most of the maintenance, and they send us a bill.
They also have, it's the only district school that we have that the president of the university has override in all situations involving enrollment. So if we have a student and they want a student in, we have to kick a student out based on our agreement with them to allow their student to stay in. And that almost came to fruition with a new professor student moving in, but we were able to work something out. But just something to bring on.
Did not realize we had that.
Yes, it's
that
in the
much-
agreement, yes.
We don't have that teaching, it's not, they don't send us a bunch of teachers over there, though.
They're still there as a training ground. There's just not, with the College of Education being down in enrollment, they just don't have as many to send. I think right now each teacher has 2. And Dr. King does an amazing job over there. It's a small campus that's not one of our campuses, so it brings unique challenges to it.
I went to campus.
So James Evans loves campus school. Just want to throw that out.
Two of my boys go there, and it's a wonderful school. So, but they do.
Cafeteria anymore, though, right?
They have a cafeteria, but I believe McFadden prepares the food and brings it over. But they don't cook the food there at the school. It's more of a satellite operation. But they still do operate the residency program with the teaching candidates from the university, and it's just a great school.
So that gives you a tour of the elementary schools of Rutherford County, what our facilities look like, what our capacity looks like. I'm talking to Ms. Hopkins before. We're looking at adding pictures of each one of our campuses as well throughout our central office and part of our board room so that it gives a face to what our schools actually look like. So you've probably visited some other districts that have that, and yes, we have a lot of them, but I think it helps us remember what we're doing here working for our schools and our students. So.
Yeah, thank you guys for getting all that together. Do we have a map with like an overhead view kind of the county and like where all the schools sit?
Yes, we do. Our HR department has one that Shane Morgan helped create so that they use them at job fairs, so that when people are coming to interview for potential jobs, they can kind of get a visual of where the schools are. So yes, we do.
Like, is it online or?
I believe it's a flyer at this point. We have it electronically, but it's not online. We have it, this is online, what Dr. Sullivan's showing.
Right.
And it shows them all as little dots on the map.
Right.
And you can zoom in and all that stuff. It's dynamic. But we do have a static map, too, that we could put online if you wanted us to.
Could you just send it to? I'd just like to kind of see visually like what that's looking
For $5, I'll send it to you.
It's cheap.
Could we have one like blown up and put, I think we need a war room for this.
That costs more than $5,
Yeah.
I promise.
Yeah, back there and have a large one put back there. Because I know they used to do them, now we have the apps and everything, and they're great when they're on GPS, but I think to get a good feel for where everything is, that would be great.
So our transportation department actually, Trey, you still down there? They have the large map that shows all those, and they use that regularly. It actually shows most of your major roads and some of the minor ones in the county, too, and they use that for that exact reason. It takes up a full wall. It's still back there, right, Trey?
We didn't take it with us, but we still have it. We don't have enough space over there. We got kicked out of the suite and put into the small space.
I think Trey designed that space.
And I don't think I was involved in that, correct? Just
You
for
were
everyone
not.
to know, okay.
You get a pass.
So, Mr. Lee, at Cedar Grove, refresh my memory, is there property there that we could add a wing?
It would be very expensive because there's a huge hill behind us. Is it possible? Yes,
Okay,
but it's very expensive.
okay.
There's about 20 acres there, 20 to 23, if I remember correctly, behind it, yes.
Any of the other locations that were near capacity, like, please, y'all don't kill me because I'm just asking, the ball field that's on Hazelwood that's in line with Smyrna Middle, it's a big ball field or a soccer field? It's a pretty sizable.
Football, soccer, and softball and baseball, yes.
Do we own that?
Yes, we do.
How big is it?
I'd say 12 to 15 acres. The middle school. It's their ball fields. Yes, ma'am. It's their ball fields.
Because there's baseball fields in the back, but that's for soccer and,
The baseball fields in the back are the cities.
okay.
We have a football field that's behind the school. That is ours. But all the ball fields, like in front of Thurman Francis, beside Smyrna Elementary, Smyrna Primary, those are all the cities. The middle school's soccer field, baseball, and softball are in that field that you're referring to. It's on the corner of Walnut and Hazelwood.
Is there some space between the football field and the PD center? It used to be tennis courts, I think.
Yes, there's a little bit of space there. Yes, there was tennis courts there.
So Roy Waldron, the two different ones that where the oldest building is, how much of that property is ours? And is there a piece of, I know there's a couple of homes back there, is there any way that we could connect something there and build something in that area?
You talking about try and connect the two different schools?
Not necessarily connect them, but,
There's space to add on to Roy Waldron.
okay.
And there was we've got a design somewhere to add another wing onto Roy Waldron.
Would it be enough that we could put everyone in that one building and then do something with that other piece of property?
Yes, I would think so.
How are the maintenance issues and how is that built? I mean, I know it's one of the older buildings.
It's kind of like some of our other older ones. We put a roof on it probably 6 to 7 years ago. Put a new roof on it. It's actually fairly watertight. It's got some HVAC that needs some upgrade. And you've seen my capital projects list, there's a lot of those. But it would be a good rehab. You could go in there and gut it and turn it into, I don't know, there's some possibilities there, yes.
Yeah, just thinking out of the box because, we're kind of landlocked on the north end and that seems to be where all the growth is for right now. I mean, it's going to be down south next, but I think that's one of the reasons that we wanted to look at all of our campuses and really get a good idea, and that way this session tonight can be sent to parents, it can be sent to other people, and they can see exactly where we are as far as capacity.
Do we have anything at Thurman Francis, any land?
We do, a little bit behind it, but you've got to be careful with it because it's highly susceptible to flooding.
Oh, it's in a floodplain.
Yes.
And there's power lines back there.
And the TVA right-of-ways there too that goes into Middle Tennessee Electric Substation.
They're so funny about that, yeah.
Yeah, they are. For some reason,
There's
they don't
nothing
like building.
beside it, it's behind it.
Ma'am?
It's behind it.
That is
we
correct.
have land, okay.
That is correct.
are all the acreage in a floodplain, or could you salvage a little snippet out of it? I would love to make it a high school, like a middle to high school, so these kids that want to go to an arts magnet school can go to an arts magnet school. And if we could carve out something and go up, instead of going out, go up, I think we could do it. They don't need ball fields, they're there for the arts. They want dance, they want band, they want music.
In an auditorium.
And an auditorium. They do need an auditorium. And if we could, you know, some of it may be bad, but if we could carve out some area or raise it up with some dirt or
Some of these older schools, instead of continuing to just add, they get very difficult to manage. And I'm speaking administrator language now. When you keep spreading them out with just another addition with more classrooms, I don't disagree that we cannot do some things, but we need to think remodel, repurpose inside, and think of spatial planning inside that existing to go along with the addition.
I agree. I
So
totally agree.
There's some possibilities, and it would, I call it growing pains, but it's some things that could be done that, if done properly, you could do an addition, move some students into that addition to free up another space,
Remodel.
and then remodel and keep that going. And it would take a couple of years, depending on your facility and how big it was, but it's something that could be done that would actually make it more functional and more user-friendly for the administration and the student. So yes, there are possibilities for things like that, and that's some things that we could begin to look at. It hasn't been the direction that we've been directed to go in the past. But it is,
But you could think about that, couldn't you?
I'm always thinking.
I know
Yes,
you
ma'am.
are. That's why we were thinking that you might want to think about it.
Yes, ma'am. There's a number of our schools where we just continue to add, where we don't add bathrooms, we don't
Right.
take those kind of things into consideration. Yes, we get more students in those facilities, but adding on for the sake of adding on does not make the administration and the student experience better. You just got them out of a portable and got them in the building. But there are a number of places that if we strategically started looking at those, where do we want to go and what do we want those schools to have, then we could begin to look at smaller additions and more renovation.
Well, just put your thinking cap on that Thurman Francis thing,
Got it.
because I think that's something that would be a great idea if we could make it happen.
Okay?
This is a very complex issue. We've had these discussions many years, and something I don't think we need to get too far away from is we also need to look at the infrastructure, the traffic flow. You know, we've hired a company to come in here and give us some advice on how to help manage this. I think we just need to be very careful before we start making too many decisions here. Let that study come back in and let's see what they're offering, what they're recommending. And I think something else we got to tell the people that are doing these studies for us is what's our maximum capacity that we want in elementary school. I mean, we're getting some of these elementary schools up to 1,400 kids. That's a huge elementary school. So we got to draw a line here somewhere.
And that is another problem. That's one of the things that we tried to look at Rockvale with the traffic at Rockvale. We had an independent company that offered to do one for us for free. They were actually working for a developer. And the way you deal with traffic is your infrastructure. And a lot of these older schools weren't designed for the capacities that we have today, nor were they designed more specifically for bus traffic. More children, my generation, more children rode the bus, or they walked, or they rode a bike. It was very few children that came in a private car. Even our higher demographic schools, we have more cars now than we did 10 years ago. The problem is you've got to spend a lot of money to improve traffic and it becomes roads and parking lots on your property. Some of our schools are not set up to do that, some are. And I think that's another equation, and Mr. Young is right, and I've said this before, that's something that just to add on to add on to save money or whatever the case may be. I'll go back to Blackman Middle. We put an annex over there, and that's a fairly, it was built in the last 15 years, so I'm gonna call it 15 to 20 years, so it's a fairly new campus. Y'all wanna see traffic, go over there in the mornings, or
I
come to
know.
my office.
That's where I live.
Come to my office, and I'll be glad to let you talk to the parents on the phone that are screaming
It's
at
a
the top of
long
their lungs.
line.
Because we just can't get the volume of students' cars off the road and through. Our staff does a great job. They can empty a school in 15 to 20 minutes in the afternoon. But when you've got 900 cars lined up out onto Blaze and Fortress, if it's a one-lane road, you got a problem. If it's a two-lane road with a center lane, they can take their life in their own hands and get in that turning lane and go around traffic, the people that are not school. So those are the kind of things that I think we need to keep out there as we look, and just increase capacity for the sake of increasing capacity is not always the best thing.
Thinking kind of outside of the box thing, I know that the whole structure of the 3 schools in a cluster all together has been a popular thing, but one of the things that's been on my mind for quite some time, actually, because my son attended Rock Springs Elementary, which was big before we did the addition on it. Just to give some perspective on a parent-student side, there were 9 to 10 classes of every grade when he was at that school, and he's now in high school, and it's even bigger now. So from one year to the next, those kids are feeling like they're in a new school almost every year because they're not in the same class with the same kids. If they're honestly not like a straight A principals list kid or one that's having some behavior problems, most of the administration and teachers don't know who they are, so they're losing that accountability piece. They're losing that familiar feeling of being seen and things like that. And I think, my personal opinion, and I'm no expert, but I think some of the bigger school issues, I think, is contributing to some of the behavior issues that we're seeing. That maybe going back to out-of-the-box thinking is maybe going to smaller pieces of land and having more schools, more populating areas versus these gigantic schools where we're just kind of putting kids through like on a conveyor belt almost.
To your point,
I agree. I think if you go back and look at your smaller schools, you'll see that those schools have smaller discipline issues than the larger schools. And it would be a real easy thing to put together, I'm sure, for.
And the way we're growing, it might be easier to find smaller pieces of land versus.
But yeah, we're running out of large
Giant
tracts of
plots.
property. It's not out there anymore.
to your point, when we were at Holloway, when all the former board was at Holloway, we had lunch there. A lot of them, the main thing that was going through there was that they felt lost in the large schools. And of course, they were already probably at-risk children anyway. But to your point, Mr. Young, I 100% agree with you. We're not going to do anything until the study comes back from the agency. But my thought was for all of us to gather all this information, because once Halloween hits, we're going to roll into Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and we'll be at the first of the year. So this is giving us a little bit of time when there's really not anything else going on and taking our attention, that we can concentrate and look on this. So we have this foundation when that information rolls in. So, but I 100% agree with you.
So next we had financial report. We just had one 2 weeks ago, so we'll do that once a month. So we'll have the October one at our November meeting. Insurance update. I know that we're in the middle of open enrollment, so we've got 15% roughly. Dr. Anthony, you want to hit on our plans for that?
Yes, Brian and I met today with My Benefits. They're going to help us also on the 19th, going out to the schools, because each employee has to enroll both in My Benefits channel as well as the Edison program for the state. And so they're going to go around and help us additionally on that day. They're going to send out about 11 people to try to run through all the schools to make sure if they're having any trouble with Edison. We had about 100 people that when we lined up what they enrolled in with Edison and My Benefits, pick different selections. Like for instance, if the two choices are only for dental, Delta or Cigna, they might put Cigna on one when they sign up and Delta on the other, so that we make sure that we take out the correct amount of money and pay the proportions correctly. We're running those lists, but we're going to do another push on the 19th.
And I was very concerned, so hearing only 15% of our people, and when we talked to My Benefits channel today, he said, no, you industry average until the last week, you were sitting 80 to 85% of people don't do it till the last week, and that absolutely terrifies me for a district our size. But what he said, that's what they do. Yes, it does.
Systems. We can wait until tomorrow
Yeah.
night for,
I don't have anything else. We've heard you be talking now.
we can wait until tomorrow night for the Tennessee and the other.
Are you going to announce?
Yes, I will tomorrow night.
Okay, thank you.
General discussion? Anybody else?
Trey, that's,
Okay, Trey.
Don't forget my volunteer.
Oh, yes, I will. I'll take care of that for you. Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn. We can adjourn. Okay. We are adjourned, 6:55.